The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles under a dome of crystal stars. 847 different species had built this place together over thousands of years. Each had earned their spot through the sacred protocols of civilization. These rules were simple but strict. Keep emotions under control. Make decisions with logic alone, and always put the group before yourself. For most species, these rules made perfect sense. The tall silver Zephyrite never showed anger or joy. The crystal beings called Lumina spoke only in mathematical equations. Even the warrior race known as the Kraxi had learned to hide their battle rage behind calm masks. This was how civilized beings acted. This was how the galaxy stayed peaceful. But the Cathara were different. They looked almost human, with pale blue skin and silver hair that changed color with their moods. Their eyes were large and dark, and tears came easily to them. When they felt something, everyone around them felt it too. It was their gift and their curse. They could share emotions with any living being just by being near them. The Council had tolerated this for 3,000 years. The Cathar served as healers and peacekeepers, using their abilities to help other species understand each other. But they could never hide what they truly felt. When something was unfair, they cried. When they were angry, their emotions spread like fire. When they loved, it filled entire rooms. Today, the Council had finally decided they had suffered enough. Veltar stood in the center of the Great Hall, his hands shaking as he faced the judgment of 800 species. His silver hair had turned deep black with sorrow, and tears rolled down his cheeks without shame. Around him, the other delegates sat in perfect silence, their faces showing nothing. The Kithara delegation has brought chaos to this council for the last time, announced High Arbiter Zexon, a being of pure energy who spoke without emotion. 3 days ago, Delegate Kaelara's emotional outburst during trade negotiations caused severe trauma to 47 telepathic species. Medical teams are still treating the victims. Veltar tried to speak, but his voice broke. He remembered that day clearly. They had been discussing food trade routes, and Kaelara had learned that the Council planned to redirect grain shipments away from a dying colony. 2 million beings would starve so that richer worlds could have cheaper food. She had not meant to react so strongly, but when she realized what was happening, her grief and anger had exploded outward. Every telepathic being in the room had felt her emotions as if they were their own. Some had collapsed. Others had screamed. The crystal delegate from Lumina had actually cracked from the emotional pressure. It had taken hours to restore order. We tried to warn your people, continued the High Arbiter. We sent teachers to help you learn control. We offered medical treatment to reduce your empathic abilities. You refused every solution. Because you asked us to stop being who we are, Veltar finally managed to say. His words carried such sadness that even the emotionally disciplined delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You want us to cut away the part of ourselves that lets us understand pain and joy and love. You want us to become empty like you. A cold silence fell over the hall. Several delegates looked uncomfortable, but none spoke in defense of the Cathara. The High Arbiter's energy form pulsed brighter. The sacred protocols exist for good reason. Emotions lead to chaos. Logic brings peace. Your people have proven that they cannot follow these basic rules of civilization. Veltar looked around the massive hall at all the species his people had once helped. The Cathara had stopped wars between the insect-like Hivari and the plant-based foliage collective. They had helped the mechanical synthetics learn to understand organic emotions. For centuries, they had been the bridge between species who could not understand each other. But now, when he searched the faces around him, he saw only cold judgment. We hereby expel the Cathara from the Galactic Council, the High Arbiter announced. Your species is banned from all Council space. Your trade agreements are void. Your colonies outside your home system must be evacuated within 1 standard year. This decision is final. The vote was swift and overwhelming. Only 12 species voted against the expulsion. 835 voted yes, as Voltaire was escorted from the hall. He felt the crushing weight of his people's future. The Cathara had 12 worlds and 50 space stations scattered across Council territory. They would lose everything. Worse, they would be alone in a galaxy that had decided they did not belong. Within days, enforcement fleets surrounded every Cathara settlement. The evacuation was carried out with mechanical efficiency. Families had hours to pack their belongings before being forced onto crowded transport ships. Children cried as they left behind the only homes they had ever known, and their parents' grief spread through the ships like a plague of sorrow. The Cathara home system of Thylos became a prison. The council placed warning beacons around every entry point, declaring the area quarantined. Any ship that tried to leave was turned back. Any ship that tried to enter was destroyed. Trade routes that had fed the Cathara for thousands of years were shut down overnight. Medical supplies stopped arriving. The technology they had always bought from other species became impossible to get. Their once bright cities began to go dark as power systems failed, and no one would sell them replacement parts. On the space station known as Haven's Rest, 300 Cathara refugees huddled in failing life support systems. They had been traveling to a new colony when the expulsion order came. Now they had nowhere to go. Council space was forbidden to them, but their home system was too far away for their damaged ship to reach. Their leader, an elderly Cathara named Silweth, gathered the survivors around her. Her hair had turned white with exhaustion and fear, but her voice was still strong. "We are not the first people to be cast out for who we are," she told them. Throughout history, many species have been judged and found wanting by those who fear what they do not understand. But we survive. We remember. And somewhere in this vast galaxy, there might still be people who value what we have to offer. But even as she spoke these hopeful words, the life support systems failed another level. They had perhaps days before the station became uninhabitable. Meanwhile, on the far edge of the galaxy, humanity continued its own slow climb toward recognition. Earth's ambassadors still waited for the Council to decide if humans were civilized enough to join their ranks. The humans had been warned that their emotions made them unreliable, that their tendency to act on feelings rather than logic was a sign of primitive thinking. None of them knew that very soon, humanity would face a choice that would define their place in the galaxy forever. Captain Sarah Chun was having her morning coffee when the distress signal first came through. She had been commanding the exploration vessel Resilience for 3 years, mapping the empty spaces between star systems on the edge of human territory. It was quiet work, mostly scanning dead planets and marking safe jump points for future colonies. The signal was weak and broken, cycling through 17 different languages that the ship's computers could not identify. Sarah listened to the desperate repetition of what sounded like a call for help, broadcast on every frequency the unknown ship could manage. "Captain, the signal is coming from the Vega 9 system," reported Lieutenant Kim Nakamura from the communications station. "It's about 6 hours away at full speed. Should I log it with Fleet Command?" Sarah set down her coffee and studied the readings. The Vega 9 system was supposed to be empty. Their last survey had shown nothing but dead rocks orbiting a dying star. But someone was out there, and they needed help. "Plot a course for Vega 9, she ordered. "Maximum speed. And send a message to Fleet Command, letting them know we're investigating a distress call." 6 hours later, the Resilience dropped out of hyperspace near a massive space station that had not been there during their last survey. The station was clearly damaged, with entire sections dark and debris floating around it like a cloud of metal snow. But it was inhabited. The distress signal was coming from inside. Dr. James Martinez joined Sarah on the bridge, his medical scanner already in hand. He was a small, quiet man who had volunteered for frontier duty because he wanted to help people in places where help was hard to find. "Life signs are weak but present," he reported. "I'm reading approximately 300 beings. Most of them appear to be in some kind of medical distress. Captain, whatever species this is, they're dying." Sarah made her decision quickly. "Hail the station. Let them know we're here to help." The response came in broken English, clearly translated by damaged computer systems. "Human ship, please. Children are sick. Do not trust, but have no choice." "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel Resilience," she replied. "We received your distress call. We have medical supplies and personnel. Request permission to dock and render aid." There was a long pause before the reply came. You are not council? Not here to finish what they started?" "We don't know what you're talking about," Sarah said honestly. "We're explorers from Earth. We heard your distress call and came to help. That's what we do." Another pause, then coordinates for a damaged docking port. When the airlock opened, Sarah got her first look at the refugees. They were humanoid, but clearly not human, with pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to shift colors like liquid metal. The one who greeted them was tall and thin, his hair a deep purple that spoke of exhaustion and despair. "I am Veltar of the Cathara," he said in carefully pronounced English. "We thank you for coming, but we have nothing to offer in payment. Council took everything." Dr. Martinez stepped forward, his medical bag already open. "Payment?" he asked, confused. "You called for help. That's payment enough. Where are your injured?" Veltar stared at him for a moment, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Then his composure cracked, and tears began to flow down his cheeks. Sarah felt a strange echo of his emotion, a deep sadness that seemed to touch her heart directly. "This way," Veltar whispered. "But prepare yourselves. We have lost so many." The main habitat area was a nightmare. Families huddled together on makeshift bedding, their strange hair colors ranging from the black of deep grief to the gray of sickness. Children lay motionless in their parents' arms, their breathing shallow and weak. The air recycling system was clearly failing, and the temperature was dropping steadily. Dr. Martinez did not hesitate. He knelt beside the first child he saw, a small girl whose hair flickered between silver and black like a dying candle. Her parents watched with hopeless eyes as he ran his medical scanner over her tiny form. "Severe dehydration and malnutrition," he reported to Sarah. "But nothing we can't fix. Captain, we need to get our medical supplies over here now." Over the next several hours, Sarah watched her crew work with an efficiency she had never seen before. Engineer Lisa Park spent 36 straight hours repairing the station's life support systems, refusing all offers to rest. Communications Officer Nakamura organized supply runs back to the Resilience, making sure every Kitara family got food and clean water. Even Security Chief Marcus Reynolds, usually suspicious of strangers, was carrying children to the medical bay and talking to them in gentle voices. What surprised Sarah most was how her crew reacted to the Cathara's strange, empathic abilities. When Dr. Martinez successfully treated the first dying child and she opened her eyes, he began to cry right along with her relieved parents. When Engineer Park finally got the heating system working and felt the grateful emotions of 300 refugees wash over her, she had to sit down from the overwhelming joy. "It's like they make us feel everything more strongly," Lieutenant Nakamura explained to Sarah later. "When they're sad, we feel sad. When they're happy, we feel happy. But it doesn't hurt. It's like finally being able to share what you're really feeling with someone else." Veltar found Sarah in the station's control room, where she was reviewing repair schedules with her engineering team. His hair had lightened to a silver blue that she was learning meant cautious hope. "Captain Chun," he said formally, "I must ask you something important. Do you know why we are here? Do you know what your council did to my people?" Sarah frowned. "Our council? I'm sorry, but I don't know what you mean. Earth isn't a member of any galactic council. We're still trying to prove we're civilized enough to be invited to join one." Veltar's eyes widened with surprise. "You are not part of the Galactic Council? The great alliance of 800 species that rules most of this galaxy?" "We've heard of them," Sarah admitted. "Earth's diplomats have been trying to make contact for years. But we're still considered too primitive, too emotional. They say humans need to learn better control before we can be trusted with galactic civilization." For a moment, Veltar just stared at her. Then, incredibly, he began to laugh. It was not a happy sound, but it was not entirely bitter either. "Too emotional," he repeated. "They cast us out for the same reason. We feel too much, care too much, love too much. The Council decided that creatures like us have no place in their perfect, logical galaxy." Over the following days, as the Resilience crew worked to repair the station and restore the refugees to health, Sarah learned the full story of the Kithara's expulsion. She heard about the sacred protocols, about the demand that all civilized beings suppress their emotions in favor of pure logic. She learned how the Kithara had been banned from an entire galaxy for the crime of feeling deeply. "Where will you go now?" she asked Veltar one evening as they watched the children play in the restored habitat area. Human and Kithara children were already becoming friends, sharing games and laughter that crossed the species barrier as if it did not exist. "I do not know," Veltar admitted. "We cannot return to Council space. Our home system is blockaded. We had hoped to find some empty world where we could start over, but our ship is too damaged for a long journey." Sarah made her decision then, just as quickly as she had decided to answer their distress call. "Come with us," she said. "Earth has colonies throughout this sector. We have room for refugees, especially refugees who have skills to offer. Our medical people say your empathic abilities could revolutionize how we treat trauma and mental illness. Our engineers say your biotechnology is centuries ahead of ours. We could learn from each other." Veltar's hair cycled through several colors before settling a warm gold that Sarah was learning meant hope mixed with disbelief. "You would do this? Take in strangers that your own council might reject you for harboring?" Sarah smiled and put her hand on his shoulder, feeling that strange echo of emotion that came with touching a Kithara. It no longer frightened her. If anything, it made her feel more connected to another living being than she ever had before. "Veltar," she said quietly, "if the Council rejects us for helping people who need help, then maybe we don't want to be part of their civilization anyway." The news spread through human space faster than any official report could travel. Within days of Captain Chun's first transmission about the Kithara refugees, every human colony within 50 light-years was organizing aid convoys. The response surprised even Sarah, who had grown up believing that humans were too divided and selfish to unite. Behind anything she was wrong. The agricultural world of New Texas sent 3 cargo ships full of grain and medical supplies. The mining colony at Ross 244 contributed raw materials and their best engineers. Even the struggling frontier settlement at Kepler 442 managed to send what little they could spare. No one had ordered this response. No government had asked for it. It simply happened because humans heard about people in need and decided to help. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived on the transport ship Mercy 3 weeks after first contact. She was a cultural anthropologist from Earth University who had spent her career studying extinct civilizations. When she learned that the galaxy had cast out an entire species, She volunteered immediately to document their culture before it could be lost forever. "This is incredible," she told Veltar as they walked through the temporary settlement that had grown up around the old station. "Your people were historians, artists, philosophers. Some of the greatest peacekeeping work in galactic history was done by Kithara mediators." Veltar's hair shifted to a pale gold, the color of old memories tinged with sadness. "We tried to help species understand each other. When the plant-based collective went to war with the insect hives, we stood between them and helped them feel each other's fears and hopes. The war ended in 3 days instead of 3 years." "And the council expelled you for this?" Elena asked, her voice rising with indignation. "They said emotions made us unreliable," Veltar explained. "They said our empathy compromised our objectivity. After the weeping incident, they decided we were too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space." Elena's hands clenched into fists. As a human, she found the idea of punishing people for feeling deeply to be fundamentally wrong. But as a scientist, she was fascinated by what the galaxy had thrown away. The settlement of New Haven began as a temporary refugee camp, but quickly grew into something much more. Human colonial engineers worked alongside Kithara, biotechnology experts, to create something neither species could have built alone. The Kithara could grow living buildings that adapted to their inhabitants' needs. The humans contributed power systems and manufacturing technology that made these biostructures more durable and efficient. The most remarkable part was how naturally the two species worked together. Kithara empaths could feel the frustration or satisfaction of their human partners, adjusting their approach in real time to match what worked best. Human engineers found that Kithara emotional feedback helped them understand which designs truly serve people's needs rather than just looking good on paper. Dr. James Martinez established the first interspecies medical clinic, where human technology combined with Kithara empathy to create treatments that address both physical and emotional trauma. Soldiers suffering from combat stress found that Kithara healers could help them process their experiences in ways that traditional therapy never achieved. It's like having someone understand exactly what you're going through, explained Sergeant Mike Torres, a Marine who had been struggling with nightmares since the border wars. "When healer Celine touches my mind, she doesn't just hear about my pain. She feels it with me. And somehow, sharing it makes it easier to bear." The breakthrough came when Veltar's daughter Silara met Marcus Webb, a 17-year-old human prodigy who had been working on biointerface technology. Marcus had lost both legs in a shuttle accident and used mechanical prosthetics that were functional but clumsy. Silara was recovering from injuries she had sustained during the evacuation from Kithara space. The two young people spent hours talking about the limitations of their respective medical technology. Marcus's prosthetics could walk and run but could not feel. Silara's Ethera healing techniques could repair emotional trauma but struggled with severe physical damage. "What if we combine them?" Marcus suggested one evening as they sat watching the sunset over New Haven's bio-grown towers. "Your people can create living tissue that responds to emotions. My people can build machines that interface with nerve systems. Maybe together we could make something that's both alive and mechanical." 6 months later, they presented their first prototype to the colony leadership. The biomechanical interface could read a patient's emotional state while simultaneously monitoring their physical condition. It was like having a medical device that could literally feel what was wrong and respond with both mechanical precision and empathic understanding. Dr. Martinez tested the device on a patient with chronic pain that traditional medicine could not explain. The biointerface detected emotional trauma stored in the patient's nervous system from a childhood accident that had never healed properly. By addressing both the physical symptoms and the emotional component, they achieved a complete cure in 3 weeks. The success attracted attention from across human space. Medical researchers, engineers, and scientists arrived at New Haven to study the human-Kithara collaboration. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization and progress. "We've been taught that emotion and logic are opposites," explained Dr. Sarah Kim, a psychologist from the Lunar Research Station. "But watching humans and Kithara work together shows that they're actually complementary. Logic without emotion is cold and disconnected. Emotion without logic is chaotic and destructive. But together, they create something better than either one alone." The colony's success did not go unnoticed beyond human space. The Galactic Council had been monitoring human expansion for decades, evaluating whether Earth's species was ready for membership. Reports of humans harboring the exiled Kithara created significant concern among the Council's leadership. Ambassador Patricia Wong received the first warning 3 months after New Haven was established. She was Earth's chief diplomatic representative to the galaxy, a career diplomat who had spent 15 years trying to prove that humans could follow the sacred protocols. The Council is disturbed by reports of human Kithara cooperation, she transmitted to Earth Command. High Arbiter Zexon specifically mentioned New Haven as evidence that humans lack the emotional discipline necessary for galactic citizenship. "We are being watched very closely, but the warnings from space seemed distant compared to the reality of what was happening at New Haven. Human children were learning Kithara games that taught emotional awareness and empathy. Kithara youngsters discovered human sports that emphasize cooperation and friendly competition. Families from both species shared meals, celebrations, and the ordinary struggles of life on a frontier world. 8-year-old Emma Chun, Captain Sarah's daughter, who had joined her mother at New Haven, became best friends with a Kithara child named Velinus. They played together every day, and Emma began to show signs of enhanced empathy that Dr. Martinez believed came from extended contact with Kithara emotional fields. "It's not that she's becoming Kithara," he explained to worried human parents. "It's that she's becoming more herself." The emotional connection helps human children understand their own feelings better while giving them tools to understand others. The cultural exchange went both ways. Kithara children exposed to human education learned to channel their empathic abilities more precisely. They discovered that human logical thinking methods could help them organize and understand the emotional information they naturally perceived. As New Haven's first year came to an end, both species had changed in fundamental ways. The humans had not become less human. The Kithara had not lost their essential nature. Instead, both had become more than they had been before. But in the cold halls of the Galactic Council, this success was seen as a threat rather than a triumph. The sacred protocols existed for good reason, the Council believed. If emotions were allowed to guide civilization, chaos would follow. High Arbiter Zexon called for an emergency session to address what they called the human problem. For if humans could successfully integrate with the supposedly unstable Kithara, it raised uncomfortable questions about whether the protocols were as necessary as the Council believed. The galaxy was about to demand that humanity choose between their new friends and their dreams of belonging to the greater civilization. Among the stars, the ultimatum arrived on a cold Tuesday morning, delivered by a Council enforcement ship that dropped out of hyperspace just outside Earth's orbital defense grid. Ambassador Patricia Wong read the message 3 times before she believed what it said. By order of the Galactic Council, the human species will cease all contact with the exiled Kithara within 72 standard hours. All Kithara individuals must be removed from human territory. any human colony found harboring Cathara after this deadline will be considered hostile to galactic civilization and will be quarantined indefinitely. Humanity's application for council membership depends on immediate compliance with this directive. Wong stared at the cold, formal language and felt her stomach drop. Humanity had worked for 20 years to earn a chance at joining the galactic community. Earth's entire future depended on council acceptance. Trade routes, technology transfers, protection from hostile species. All of it would disappear if they were branded as outcasts. But the Cathara had become part of human space in ways that made separation almost impossible. There were 12,000 refugees now scattered across 47 colonies. Thousands of human children had grown up with Cathara friends. The medical breakthroughs from bioempathic technology had saved hundreds of lives. Joint research projects were producing innovations that neither species could achieve alone. President Maria Santos called an emergency cabinet meeting within hours of receiving Wong's report. The debate was fierce and immediate. "We have no choice," argued Defense Secretary General Harrison. "The Council controls most of the galaxy. If we're shut out, humanity will be isolated forever. We'll never have access to advanced technology, safe hyperspace routes, or protection from aggressive species like the Craxi war fleets. And what about our promise to the Cathara?" demanded Colonial Affairs Minister Dr. Rachel Foster. "We told them they could find safety with us. We built colonies together. We have children who consider Cathara to be their families. Are we supposed to just throw that away?" The president listened to hours of argument before making her decision. "I'm calling for a full vote by the Colonial Assembly. Every human settlement gets to decide this for themselves. We're not going to make this choice in some back room on Earth." The vote was scheduled for 48 hours later, giving each colony barely enough time to debate and decide. The results came in slowly as settlements across human space struggled with an impossible choice. Earth voted to comply with the ultimatum by a narrow margin. The older, more established colonies followed Earth's lead, believing that galactic acceptance was worth the sacrifice. But the frontier settlements voted overwhelmingly to keep their Cathara neighbors. New Haven's vote was unanimous. Not a single human family was willing to abandon their friends. Captain Sarah Chun, now the elected administrator of New Haven, received the council's evacuation order with grim determination. A massive enforcement ship had appeared in the system, along with 3 smaller vessels designed for transporting large numbers of refugees. The message was clear. The Cathara were leaving, whether they wanted to or not. All Cathara individuals must report to designated transport areas within 6 hours, announced the council fleet commander, a cold mechanical voice that belonged to one of the artificial intelligences that served as enforcers. "Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." Sarah gathered the colony leadership in the central community hall, where hundreds of human and Cathara families had come together to hear their fate. The building had been grown by Cathara, biotechnology and powered by human engineering, a perfect symbol of what they had built together. "I won't lie to you," Sarah told the crowd. "Earth's government has ordered us to comply. They say humanity's future depends on it. But this colony was built on the idea that we don't abandon people who need our help." Valtar stood up slowly, his silver hair now streaked with the white of old age. "Captain Chun, you have already given my people more than we ever dared hope for. We will not ask humans to sacrifice their future for us. If we must go, we will remember your kindness forever." His words sent a wave of profound sadness through the Cathara in the room, and that sadness spread to their human friends through the empathic connections that had grown over months of close contact. Children began to cry. Parents held each other tightly. The entire hall filled with shared grief so powerful that even the council enforcement teams orbiting overhead could detect the emotional disturbance. 8-year-old Emma Chen stood up on her chair, tears streaming down her face. "No!" she shouted with all the fury an 8-year-old could manage. "Velinus is my best friend. You can't take him away." Her Cathar friend, a small boy with hair that flickered between gold and silver, took her hand. The moment they touched, something extraordinary happened. Their shared emotion, the desperate love of two children for each other, spread outward through the Kithara's empathic network. Every Kithara in the hall felt it. More importantly, every human touching a Cathar felt it too. The simple, pure love that children have for their friends became a wave of emotion that connected every person in the room. Dr. James Martinez had been treating a Cathar patient with chronic pain when the emotional wave hit him. For the first time, he truly understood what the Cathara experienced every moment of their lives. The constant awareness of others' feelings, the inability to shut out pain or joy or love. And he understood what they would lose if they were forced to live in isolation. "This is wrong," he said quietly, but his voice carried in the suddenly silent hall. "What we have here isn't dangerous or chaotic. It's beautiful. It's what civilization should be. Different people caring for each other, sharing their strengths to help with each other's weaknesses." The Council enforcement ship sent another message. Cathara evacuation will commence in 1 hour. Interference will not be tolerated. But when the transport beams activated, something unprecedented happened. The human and Cathara children, who had formed the strongest friendships, simply would not separate. Emma Chan and Velinus held each other's hands so tightly that the transport beam could not get a clear lock on either one of them. Other children followed their example, creating a chain of linked hands that crossed species lines. The intensity of their shared emotions created a phenomenon that the Council had never encountered. The empathic field generated by terrified, defiant children created enough psychic interference to disrupt the transport technology completely. "Transport systems are malfunctioning," reported the enforcement ship's AI, unable to achieve target acquisition. "The emotional field is interfering with our equipment." More human families began joining the chain, linking hands with their Cathara neighbors. The empathic network grew stronger with each new connection, fed by the simple determination of people who refused to be separated. Marcus Webb, now 19 and walking on biomechanical legs that responded to his emotions as well as his thoughts, linked hands with Silara. Their connection, strengthened by months of working together, sent a pulse of shared determination through the growing network. "We are not leaving," Silara announced, her hair blazing with the silver white of absolute resolution. "And our friends are not abandoning us." The standoff continued for hours. The Council ships had enough firepower to destroy the colony if they chose, but they had been sent to evacuate refugees, not to commit genocide. The enforcement AI found itself in a situation that its programming had never anticipated. Beings who simply refused to comply through the power of emotional connection rather than military resistance. Reports of the standoff spread throughout human space within hours. News crews arrived from Earth, broadcasting images of children from two species standing together against impossible odds. The footage showed something the galaxy had never seen. Not conflict between different peoples, but the absolute refusal to accept that difference meant separation. Dr. Elena Vasquez transmitted a live report that reached every human settlement. "What we're seeing at New Haven isn't chaos or instability. It's the emergence of a new kind of civilization, one based on emotional connection rather than emotional suppression. The Council fears this because it challenges everything they believe about what makes a society work." As night fell over New Haven, hundreds of humans and Cathara maintained their connected circle around the colony's central plaza. Children slept in their parents' arms while the adults took shifts, keeping the emotional network strong enough to disrupt the Council's technology. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen when beings chose love over logic, connection over control, and friendship over the cold calculations of political necessity. The standoff at New Haven lasted 3 days. For 72 hours, human and Tether families maintained their emotional network while Council enforcement ships orbited overhead, unable to break through the psychic interference generated by pure determination and love. The images spread across the galaxy faster than any government could control them. Independent news networks, smugglers' communication relays, and even some official council channels carried the footage of children from two species refusing to be separated. For the first time in thousands of years, beings throughout the galaxy saw an alternative to the cold logic of the sacred protocols. On the third day, something extraordinary happened. A small ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Not a human vessel or a council enforcer, but something else entirely. The pilot identified herself as Commander Thizes of the Andromedian Trade Collective, a group of species that had left council space decades earlier. New Haven Colony. "This is Commander Thizes," came the transmission. "We've been monitoring your situation. We're here to offer assistance if you need it." Captain Sarah Chun, exhausted from 3 days of maintaining the resistance, could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Commander Thizes, this is Administrator Chun. What kind of assistance are you talking about?" "Safe passage, if you want it," Thizes replied. "The collective has been watching your integration with the Kithara. We've been hoping someone would finally challenge the Council's monopoly on civilization. You've proven that different species can work together without giving up who they are. The offer created a new possibility that no one had considered. Humanity did not have to choose between abandoning the Kithara and being cast out alone. There were other species in the galaxy who had chosen their own path. But before Sarah could respond to the offer, another message came through, this one from Earth itself. President Maria Santos appeared on every screen in the colony, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. Behind her, Sarah could see the emergency session of the United Earth Assembly still in progress. "My fellow humans," the president began, "we stand at a crossroads that will define our species for generations to come. The Galactic Council has demanded that we abandon our friends to prove our worthiness. They want us to become something we are, not in order to join their civilization." Sarah felt her heart racing as she listened to the most important speech in human history. We came to the stars not to become something else, but to remain human. And being human means standing with those who need us, regardless of the cost. The Council says emotions make us weak. I say emotions make us strong. They make us care about more than just ourselves. They make us fight for what is right, even when it is difficult. The president paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see every human watching across the galaxy. Therefore, by unanimous vote of the Colonial Assembly, humanity formally rejects membership in the Galactic Council. We choose our friends over their approval. We choose our values over their acceptance. And we invite any species that shares these values to join us in building something better. The transmission ended with the official announcement of the Open Stars Alliance, a new organization founded on the principle that diversity strengthens civilization rather than threatening it. Humanity and the Kithara would be the founding members, with an open invitation to any species that valued emotional authenticity and mutual support. The Council enforcement ships received new orders within hours. Rather than continue the failed evacuation, they were directed to establish a quarantine around all human space. If humanity wanted to ally itself with the unstable Kithara, they would face the same isolation that had brought the Kithara to near extinction. But the quarantine never had a chance to succeed. Within weeks, the Andromedian Trade Collective formally joined the alliance. They were followed by the empathic healers of Rigel, a species that had been marginalized by the Council for similar reasons as the Kithara. The crystalline beings known as the Songweavers, who communicated through music rather than logic, arrived next. Dr. Elena Vasquez's research played a crucial role in the Alliance's early growth. A documentation of Kithara civilization had revealed how much the galaxy had lost when emotions were branded as dangerous. Species across the galaxy began to question whether the sacred protocols had truly brought peace, or just silence. The Council created order by suppressing everything that made different species unique. She explained in a broadcast that reached rebel networks throughout Council space. They achieved unity by demanding conformity. But unity and uniformity are not the same thing. Real strength comes from different kinds of people working together while remaining themselves. The Alliance's first major test came when the Craxi warrior clans asked to join. The Craxi were known throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters who valued honor and courage above logic. The Council had forced them to suppress their warrior culture in exchange for membership, turning proud fighters into emotionless drones. Many humans in Kithara worried about accepting a warrior species into an alliance based on peace and cooperation. But Veltar, now serving as the Alliance's first cultural ambassador, argued for inclusion. The Council teaches that emotions are dangerous because they can lead to violence, he said during the debate. But emotions can also lead to courage, honor, and the willingness to protect others. The Craxi do not fight because they lack logic. They fight because they love their families and their way of life enough to defend them. The Craxi delegation, led by war leader Gorthic, arrived at New Haven expecting to negotiate with cold diplomats. Instead, they found themselves welcomed by families who offered to share their homes and meals. Kithara children, initially frightened by the large, fierce-looking warriors, discovered that Craxi adults would sit still for hours to let small ones climb on their armor. "Your younglings show no fear," Gorthic observed to Sarah during his visit. "In Council space, other species' children run from us. Here, they treat us like family." The Craxi joined the Alliance 3 days later, bringing their knowledge of defensive technology and their absolute loyalty to those they considered friends. Within 2 years, the Open Stars Alliance included 47 species. Some were refugees from Council space who had been marginalized for being too emotional, too creative, or too different. Others were independent civilizations that had never sought Council membership because they refused to suppress their cultural identities. The Alliance capital grew up around New Haven, which expanded from a small colony into a thriving world where dozens of species lived and worked together. The biomechanical technology developed by Marcus Webb and Silara became the foundation for medical advances that helped beings across the galaxy. Kithara empaths served as cultural ambassadors, helping new species understand each other. Human engineers and Craxi warriors worked together on defensive systems that protected Alliance space from external threats. But perhaps the most important development was the empathic communication network that Silara and Marcus unveiled in their 4th year of partnership. Using a combination of Kithara biology, human technology, and Craxi quantum field manipulation, they created relay stations that allowed beings across the Alliance to share emotional experiences safely. For the first time in galactic history, Silara explained during the network's unveiling ceremony, different species can truly understand each other, not just hear each other's words, but feel each other's hopes and fears and dreams. The first message sent through the network came from a Craxi child on Gorthic's homeworld to a human child on Earth. It carried no words, just the simple joy of a young being who wanted to share friendship across the stars. Within minutes, Thousands of connections were being made between species that had never been able to communicate before. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Several member species had begun to question the sacred protocols openly. The mechanical synthetics asked why they were forbidden to explore emotions when the Alliance showed that feelings could enhance rather than compromise logical thinking. The Peaceful Foliage Collective wondered why they had to hide their deep love of growing things when the Alliance celebrated such passions as sources of strength. High Arbiter Zexon called for stronger enforcement measures, but found resistance even within the Council itself. Some species were beginning to remember what they had given up in exchange for the cold peace of the protocols. On the 5th anniversary of first contact between humans and Cathara, President Santos stood before the Alliance Assembly to deliver the annual State of the Union address. Representatives from 53 species filled the great hall that had grown from New Haven's original community center. 5 years ago, 2 species cast out by the galaxy for being too emotional found each other in the darkness between stars, she said. Today, we have built something that those who cast us out said was impossible. A civilization that grows stronger through diversity, that finds power in compassion, and that proves that the greatest achievements come not from suppressing what makes us different, but from celebrating it. The President's words were translated into dozens of languages and broadcast across Alliance space through the empathic network.